Hi, I'm Chloe VidAmour, and today I will be talking all about Emily Dickinson, so stay tuned. To start off, some quick facts. She was an American poet and born in Amherst, Massachusetts on December 10, 1830. Her birthday was actually yesterday. Unless I'm presenting this in the way future, then her birthday was actually days ago. She had two siblings, her older brother William Austin Dickinson and her younger sister Lavina Norcross Dickinson. Boom. In her early life, she lived with her parents and two siblings at their homestead. The family moved when Emily was 9 years old to Pleasant Street after Lavina was born. This was to accommodate Edward, her father's legal and political career, and to provide a bigger house for his children. Edward wanted to provide his children with refined education. The education catered to Emily was not one that was usually provided to girls in the Victorian age. She received classical education that only elite could afford. She went to primary school in Amherst before getting enrolled at the Amherst Academy. She took a great interest in piano, baking, and gardening. She began her education at Mount Holyoke Female Seminary in 1847. Emily, as a young girl, had a lot of female friends and some male friends. However, she showed no affection beyond friendship towards these male friends of hers. I don't know why I looked down like I was done. Out of her many friends, there was one that was especially important to her, her cousin and best friend, Sophia Holland. A turn of events in Emily's life was the sudden death of Sophia Holland. She was so shaken by this, she was sent off to Boston to help for the trauma. A close friend and tutor of hers was Benjamin Franklin. Yes, old Benny boy. You may be thinking, Emily Dickinson and Benjamin Franklin? There's no way that's possible. Well, you're right, I lied. However, Benjamin Franklin Newton was her close friend and tutor. She would call him Newton, and he had a deep regard for her. Newton became close with the Dickinsons and often had dinner at their house. Newton always encouraged Emily to write. He always knew how smart she was and what she was capable of. When Newton was dying, he wrote to her and told her to continue to live until she achieved greatness that he foresaw in her. Emily was shocked when she read 3 days after that he passed away due to tuberculosis on March 24, 1853. It has been suggested that Newton and Emily were romantically involved, but this is highly unlikely. Very little is known about the romantic life of Emily Dickinson. Yet, evidence reflects that she had received a proposal from a graduate at Amherst, George Gould, but she declined his proposal and died a spinster. She based her writings, especially her poems, on a few themes. She wrote several poems on nature and flora. She also wrote gospel poems based on the parables of the Bible and poetry about death and mortality. Emily Dickinson's works were published mostly after her death. The bulk of her works were retrieved by her sister Lavina after the poet's death. Her sister burnt most of her works as she promised Emily, but she recognized the prominent worth of her sister's poems and wanted the world to applaud her works. An edited version of Emily's poems was published by T.W. Higginson, but they edited her work to meet the norms of punctuation and capitalization. Thomas H. Johnson published the first scholarly collection in 1955. They were the exact replica of her manuscripts, untitled and only numbered. No alterations were made, and the unconventional capitalization and punctuation was left as written by her. Finally, in 1958, along with Theodore Ward, Johnson had published a complete collection of Dickinson's letters, which was presented in 3 volumes. In 1981, her original papers were printed under the name of the Manuscript Books of Emily Dickinson. However, it is speculated that the order of her poetry and letters is still incorrect and not maintained in chronological order. In 1874, Emily Norcross Dickinson, her mother, had a stroke and it left her paralyzed. For the next 7 years, up until her death, on November 14, 1882, her daughters took care of her. Later, the poet wrote of her mother, "When we were children and she journeyed, she always brought us something. Now she would bring us but herself, what an only gift." During this time, Emily did not get out a lot. She caved herself in the walls within her home. The only thing that would bring her comfort and relief is when she would distract herself with gardening and writing. By 35, she had written over 1,000 poems that she categorized in manuscripts. She had sent these to Samuel Bowles, the chief editor of Springfield Republican. He had published around 50 poems and a few anonymously in his journal. In the late 1860s, she continued to write. However, she stopped collecting her poetry and it became fragments of poetic art. She sent her poems and letters to only close family friends that appreciated her writing and never requested recognition. Emily Dickinson's health began to decline after the death of her youngest nephew in 1883. She became extremely fragile and was on bed rest. But even during severe illness, she continued to write. At the age of 55, on May 15, 1886, she died of a kidney disorder that was called Bright's disease. As per her last wish, she was carried through a blooming field of buttercups to her grave, where her coffin laid in the family cemetery. Good enough, literally good enough. Because of the wide heritage that stood in the homestead, especially contributing to Emily Dickinson's works, the mansion has been preserved as a museum. Emily's herbarium, a collection of preserved plant specimens, consists of 66 pages of plant species from her garden, is now preserved and shown at the University of Harvard. The Amherst College also purchased the house of William and Susan Dickinson, called Evergreens. They converted it into a museum open for tours and renamed it the Emily Dickinson Museum. The Emily Dickinson Museum is made up of 2 historic houses in the center of Amherst, Massachusetts, associated with Emily Dickinson and her family members of the 19th and early 20th centuries. The homestead was the birthplace and home of Emily Dickinson. Her quiet life here was infused with creative energy and produced almost 1,800 poems and a plethora of vibrant letters. The Evergreens next door was home to William, her brother, her wife, and close friend of Emily's, Susan, and their 3 children. The museum was created in 2003 when the 2 houses merged under the ownership of the Amherst College. Its mission is to educate diverse audiences on Emily Dickinson's family, life, creative work, and enduring relevance. Emily Dickinson is such a unique poet that it is very difficult to place her in just one single tradition. She seems to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. She comprehends a great deal of meaning into a very small number of words. This makes her poems hard to understand at first, but when the meaning does unveil itself, it can leave a big impact and become very clear. Some of her most famous poems were bizarre death fantasies. However, she was also known for her beautiful nature writing. The poem I have chosen is called Hope is Just a Thing with Feathers. Hope is just a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. The sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird and that keeps so many warm. I've heard it in the chilliest lands and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asks a crumb of me. Emily describes hope as the bird, the thing with the feathers, that perches in the soul. There, it sings freely with no guidelines and never stops. The song of hope sounds sweetest in the gale, and it would require a horrific storm to ever abash the little bird that kept so many warm. The bird being hope, and hope keeping everyone warm, and having so much capability. Emily says that she has heard the bird of hope in the chilliest of lands and the strangest sea, but never, no matter how extreme or harsh the conditions, did it ever ask for a single crumb from her. Meaning, in the worst of times, you can still have hope, and hope will never ask for anything of you in return. It will always be there for you for whenever you need it. What I love about this poem is that it is straightforward and very relatable. Everyone can connect to this because everyone has experienced where, even in the worst times, in the back of your mind, there's always that what if, or the little glimmer of hope that keeps you going. An example of a literary device used in the poem is a metaphor. She emphasizes the bird that sings strongly and with such passion during a hurricane, requiring a heavy storm to stop the bird. She also uses a metaphor while comparing hope to a singing bird. Hope is nothing but a feeling, and no one can ever take that away from you. Hey guys, I'm still Chloe VidAmour, and this has been the first and last episode of The Chloe Show, featuring Emily Dickinson. So, thanks for watching. Peace out. Peace out. I did thumbs up instead of pieces, whatever. Darn it. And I'm done.